Many things have shaped and impacted my musical journey so far. Concerts, bands, albums, songs, and so much more. But one has had a profound impact on me, and that is the record label Rounder Records. This month they're turning 50 years old, and what a massive milestone that is. And they're still going strong today. Well, today we're going to celebrate them. What do Tiny Tim, Tony Rice, Alan Lomax, Robert Plant, and the Chicago Women's Liberation Rock Band all have in common? Not too much, right? Well, they all have releases on Rounder Records. Record labels have their purpose for artists, but for listeners, they can actually help us discover a ton of new music that we may have never otherwise discovered. And that's exactly what happened with me and Rounder Records. I had a handful of releases as a kid, and over time I wanted to discover what else they had released. Well, I started with 4 albums. Now I have close to 700. So obviously, my desire to discover more led me to a lot of discoveries from them. To celebrate this huge milestone today and to simply share with you some of my favorite recordings and recordings that impacted me a ton, we're going to look at some of the most cherished releases I have found from Rounder Records. We don't have time today to do 50 for 50, but we'll do half that, and I'll divide those releases across 3 different categories. So let's start. First, we're going to take a look at albums that I either grew up with or ones that early on changed the direction of my music.
So, the first Rounder release is actually probably the most famous album in bluegrass music, and it is the first bluegrass album I ever owned, and definitely the first bluegrass album I ever really liked. Hearing the New South, especially Jerry Douglas and Tony Rice, really gave me some music to love and really look forward to for the rest of my bluegrass career. The next album I discovered chronologically was this album by Mark O'Connor. I was used to his traditional fiddling growing up, but with this album, it was such a musical adventure and a surprise. It encouraged me to be more progressive in my music and to continue learning more instruments as he played all of the instruments on this album. And speaking of traditional fiddling, I found this next album actually a long time ago at the local library, and I picked it up because of the title. And ever since, I have been an incredibly big fan of Natalie McMaster and of Cape Breton fiddling. Horseflies, what an incredible band. This album showed me what traditional music could be with innovative musicians behind it interpreting the songs. The rhythm section on this album is absolutely incredible. I heard the track Sleepy Jesus Ride from this album many years ago on an online radio station, and I was hooked immediately on this album. It combines so many different styles with so many great, amazing musicians. I didn't know at the time that Peter was a Ukrainian American, or that years later I would have so many Ukrainian connections myself. The title actually refers to a phrase in Ukrainian, but I'll leave that for you to discover what it means. Around the same time I discovered this amazing album and the final album by John Hartford, another album of fiddle music that was entirely new to me. I not only loved listening to it, but I quickly committed every tune on here to memory. As you know by now, Tony Rice and Vassar Clements are 2 of my biggest musical heroes, so I knew both of these albums early on, but the significance and weight of these recordings didn't hit me until many years later. There's a good chance I would have lost interest in the bluegrass genre if not for these 2 albums. Both are just quintessential examples of how to arrange and perform bluegrass music. Nearly everything I know about bluegrass has come from one of these 2 albums. The music of Howard Armstrong took a hold of me the moment I heard it. A true genius, his recordings not only introduced new music to me, but taught me many important cultural aspects. Everything about this album is great, but his fiddling style is truly phenomenal. He even drew the front cover. The last album in this category is from the World Music Anthology collection. All of those releases impacted me, but I chose Azerbaijan because of it introducing me to the Comanche, a type of violin used there. I fell in love with the tone and repertoire for this instrument and immediately wanted to learn everything I could about it, the country, and the culture.
These next 10 releases are 10 releases I could never live without. They have everything. They have masterful musicianship, amazing song selection, a great listening experience from start to finish, and most of all, they really speak to my heart in a way that no other recording possibly could.
The first time I heard this, my initial reaction was, wow, this is one of the most perfect recordings I have ever heard. It was everything a great album should be. There was a soaring, crying pedal steel, great vocals and great lyrics, and these created the perfect mood for me. This was the album here that showed me that bluegrass captured more emotions than I thought. I heard the first track on this album after I received some very sad news once, and the message was exactly what I needed to hear. Ever since, this album has been very close to my heart. Recently, when I mentioned discovering Alison Krauss, I was specifically referring to this album, Paper Airplane. I haven't heard an album yet that puts so much emotion into it as she does here. The song selection and arrangements are purely stunning. This album spoke to me and resonated with me during some really rough times, and out of all of the albums mentioned today, this is the one that is most special to me. I also spoke about this album in a previous video. Rustin captures so much emotion and puts it all on this album, and it's super relatable. And no surprise to learn that these songs are very personal to him. The music I'm drawn to most is when it is an honest and sincere outpouring from the creator, and that is exactly what this album is. Another one of my favorite recordings, but a very bittersweet one actually. The great part is hearing the amazing song selection, arrangements, heartfelt performing, and incredible musicianship by all involved. The sad parts are, though, that Larry Rice passed away not long after these albums, and that this is unfortunately some of the final recordings from Tony Rice before his playing began to slip due to arthritis. However, it is clear that when these four get together, they truly make a supergroup. This album was such a delight when it came out in 2016. Mart's early Rounder records came out in the 80s, and there was none in between. So this was so amazing when it came out. Songs that really touched the heart, very similar to the style of Alison Krauss, an incredible listening experience. This favorite album of mine is technically not on Rounder, it's on their imprint Zoe Records, but we'll include it anyways. I discovered Martha Wainwright on the Transatlantic Sessions, that amazing musical gathering, and I immediately fell in love with her amazing songwriting and incredibly addicting melodies. Once you turn on one of her albums, you are hooked on it, and this is one of the best examples. The lyrics and music are just perfect. The songs on here capture every emotion, from hard-driving bluegrass to sadness, all backed with a stellar lineup. This was the soundtrack for many long walks along the beach for me. Two things about this recording made it one of my favorites. First, the songwriting, especially the title track, just incredible lyrics, and also Tony Rice's playing on here. By this point it is a little simpler than it was in the past, but I think it conveys more emotion than it ever did, and it is just an incredible treat to listen to. And the final album in my top 10 favorites, I have played this one more than all of the others mentioned combined. This album here changed the course of bluegrass and related music forever. Each musician on here is a true virtuoso that showed the new possibilities for their instruments.
Lastly, I'll share with you 5 recordings that I discovered because of Rounder, from artists that I had not heard of before that. I probably would not have purchased these without that connection, but now that I have, I can sincerely say that they are 5 of my most favorite recordings I've ever heard.
I was so happy to discover Brave Combo through Rounder. Probably something I would have otherwise missed, but by discovering them I learned so many new tunes and so many sources of tunes, because thankfully they list them in the liner notes. In fact, one of their polkas came from Krakow, where my friend is from, and we played that piece together in a concert once. And through Brave Combo, I discovered this next album with the incredible, amazing Tiny Tim. And man, I never thought I would find Tiny Tim on Rounder, but sure enough he was. And this is such an incredible listening. You absolutely have to check out Tiny Tim on Rounder Records. Another unexpected find, but one I am incredibly thankful for. The fiddling on this, there's a special guest. I will just leave it for you to discover. It is amazing. I normally don't like compilations, but this one is so masterfully done and showed me so many new artists that it has absolutely become one of my favorite compilations to date. And lastly is NRBQ, a discovery that I can say is entirely thanks to Rounder. And what can I say about the songs? They're some of the best I've ever heard.
Well, that's all for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this video today. And I hope you found some new music to go out and look up. And if you already have some Rounder records that you really enjoy, let me know what they are. I'd love to know which ones you're listening to. And if you would like a few more recommendations, let me know. And if there's enough interest, I can put together a list of maybe 10 more releases, and I think I will put that on my Instagram channel. So let me know, and if there's interest, I'll absolutely put that together. Next week, we're going to take a look at a topic that is either loved or really hated. What will that topic be? Stay tuned.